Hi, this is Meg with MK Travel. Today I'm going to talk about how travel has changed in the last 2 years and what are some strategies for making it the whole travel experience a little less stressful. 2 years ago, I could show up to the airport with my passport and credit card and I'd be okay. I'd be able to figure it out from there. Nowadays, it's not that simple. There are so many different requirements, and the requirements, there are requirements from the destination, from the tour operator, from the like it's from all over the place, and the requirements are changing all of the time. And then secondly, there's a higher probability that you're going to hit some bumps in the road. And, you know, things that 2 years ago would have been an inconvenience or a frustration. Well, now it's a bigger issue and a bigger situation that you need to deal with. So let's go ahead and talk about it. First of all, with the requirements, you need to stay on top of the requirements. These change all the time. We've heard about, particularly in the cruise industry, there have been, clients who haven't been able to get onto a ship because they didn't realize that they needed a pre-cruise COVID test because that requirement had changed. Or they didn't realize that if you sailed from this port, you needed to be vaccinated because some ports you don't have to be vaccinated, according to that particular cruise line. So there are different requirements depending on where you're going and when you're going. It's hard to stay on top of. So 4 to 5 weeks before your trip, go ahead and review what those requirements are. You're going to want to check with your airline. I know American uses Verifly. United has its Travel Ready Center on their app. Both of those apps are great for kind of laying out and organizing what you need to do to meet the requirements of a particular destination. So also check with the country or the destination where you're going. They will also have specific travel requirements. There are some countries or some destinations that require you to get travel authorization, something similar. So I know Jamaica has something like that. And then also particular destinations, in addition to their travel authorization, you may need a negative COVID test, you may need proof of vaccination, you may need travel insurance. So check with the country, check with your tour operator, and get clear on what you need. Now, if you need a COVID test, go ahead and schedule that at least 4 to 5 weeks out. I did a video on COVID tests. I would go ahead and schedule 2 or 3 appointments at different places just to mitigate the risk that you don't get results back in time. Also figure out how you need to report test results. Will they be emailed to you? Do you then upload the test results? Do you come in with a photo, with a printout of it? Just figure that out ahead of time. Again, I would highly recommend printing it out on paper, bringing that with you to the airport. With the COVID vaccine, if you need, first of all, figure out whether or not you need a vaccine. Number two, figure out how you need to provide documentation. Again, do you bring the vaccine card? Do you upload the vaccine card somewhere? Do you register for a particular QR code? Usually figure that out, and that will be well documented either with the airline or the destination where you're going or whoever is requiring the vaccine. Finally, verify if you need insurance and what needs to be covered at what level. Again, who's ever requiring the insurance will lay out very clearly what you need to be insured against and how much. And once you get that information from who's ever requiring it, go ahead and call your insurance agency just to verify that they do indeed provide the coverage that you need, number one, and number two, that they provide you the letter of coverage that will qualify and prove documentation. With insurance, again, verify how you're going to provide proof of insurance. Do you upload a particular letter? Do you bring a printout? What do you need to do to verify your insurance? Again, with insurance, COVID test, and vaccination, bring a printout just in case, or a photocopy. And finally, keep in mind, to get back stateside, you need a negative COVID test. So before you leave, get that figured out. So if you're on a cruise, they'll provide testing on the cruise ship. If a lot of the all-inclusive resorts, particularly in Mexico, they do testing on site. Typically, you'll schedule it the day you arrive. You check in, you schedule your COVID test. But if you're on your own, and again, if you're going on a land tour, usually your land tour company will help coordinate your exit COVID test. But again, if you're traveling independently, make sure you've scoped it out and you understand what is accepted to get back into the United States, and you know where to get it, and you've put that in your schedule. And I will say the COVID test, if you're at a resort in Mexico, it went really quickly for us. If you're kind of going to a lab, it was not a smooth process. So just, estimate more time for the COVID test than you would expect. Now, finally, like, a lot of things can happen. There's so many different layers of complexity. There's a higher probability that things will not go smoothly and you'll encounter a few bumps. And simple frustrations are no longer simple frustrations. They turn more into a situation. So, for example, when my son and I this summer were flying to Costa Rica, we had a layover in Dallas. So our flight to Dallas was delayed by about 2 hours. Normally a 2-hour flight delay, little annoying, but not a big deal. However, that delay made it so that we couldn't make our connecting flight to Costa Rica. As a result, we had to get a hotel in Dallas. So again, we had travel insurance, and there's trip delay coverage, so we were able to get insurance to pay for it, to help us out with that. But again, little things are going to happen, and it becomes more and more difficult to deal with. And also for cruises, a lot of times if you have an hour or two delay and you're not able to make your connecting flight, well, what happens if you miss your cruise? If you're flying to a cruise, it's about to take off, you get there too late, what happens? Well, again, cruise insurance in particular, travel insurance, see what happens with your travel insurance policy if you miss embarkation day for your cruise. That's something to look into. And if you're on a land tour, ask the land tour company what happens if you miss. The other thing that you can do is also build in flexibility. So with my son and I, when we went to Costa Rica, we planned to get there a day early. So when we missed our connecting flight and we got there a day late, it was fine because we had built in that layer of flexibility into our schedule. Other things that could happen, you can test positive and not be able to get back home. That's a possibility. So again, check with check what happens if you test positive. How are you able to get back to the United States? Do you have to show a negative test, or is it sufficient to get documentation from a medical professional that you're not showing symptoms and that you're not contagious? So figure that out. The what if I test positive? Additionally, with your travel insurance, check to see what your travel insurance will cover if you test positive. Will they cover quarantine? What does it look like? And another thing that could happen, you could get sick when you're abroad. And this could have happened at any point in time, even pre-COVID. So, for me in particular, around 10 to 15 years ago, my husband and I were in Peru, I got really sick in Machu Picchu and I had to run out to go to and I was, losing my lunch in the bathroom outside of Machu Picchu. And I remember sitting at a picnic table with my head on the table, sleeping, just trying to feel better. My husband came out. I was able to pull it together enough to walk back down to Aguas Calientes, and then we got back into town. We wound up going to I think it was a pension or whatever it was, and we asked the people there because I was feeling so sick. My husband's like, my wife's really sick. Can we just pay for a room and she'll just sleep here for a little bit until she feels better? And I must have looked bad because the people at the hotel were like, oh my gosh, do we need to call a doctor? Is she okay? Luckily, my husband is a doctor, so he was able to help me out, and I was able to pull it together enough so that we could enjoy the rest of our trip. But we got lucky. We got lucky with that. So the whole thing of you could get sick, you could get injured, that's never changed. However, the probability of it happening now is probably a little higher than it was then. So what happens if you get sick when you're abroad? And again, this is something that travel insurance can help you with. They have emergency medical care, so you don't necessarily have to worry about whether or not your own health insurance here will take care of it. A lot of times too, with American health insurance, when you're abroad, typically they'll reimburse you, but you have to pay upfront a lot of times. So travel insurance is really going to help you out with that, where yeah, they'll reimburse you, but they'll also help you out of sticky situations in case, the provider needs to be paid up front. Also really helpful if you need emergency transportation back to the United States. I think if you look at it, most of these increased risks in terms of increased risk of travel delay, increased risk of not being able to get back home because of a positive COVID test, increased risk of getting sick while you're abroad. Travel insurance does a lot to mitigate those risks. So I'm actually not an insurance agent. I just think that in the current situation we're in, if you're traveling abroad, you really need to get travel insurance. It helps mitigate the risks of the bumps that you'll face in the road. So overall, I think you should continue to travel now if you feel it's safe. If it's just these frustrations that are holding you back, I think you should go ahead and travel now. Understand that things are more complicated. It takes more preparation and more thought. You need to build more flexibility into your schedule, into your trip. But I think you can do all of these things and avoid a lot of the stress. And finally, I think that you need to pre-think some of the things that could go wrong and try to figure out ahead of time solutions. And I think now's really a good time to use travel insurance. I did not use it before this year. But I would say this year, it's just when you evaluate the situation that we're in, I think now's the time to use it, and it helps mitigate a lot of these risks. So that's that. And the next video will be a lot more fun and away from the serious logistics of how to make a trip happen at this point in time. Thanks.